You know, here in Australia, we're pretty used to dealing with some seriously dangerous animals. But what if I told you the deadliest one of all is something you probably swat away without a second thought? Today, we're going to dive into the surprisingly complex world of the mosquito and why it's becoming a bigger and bigger threat right here at home.
So let's start with a pop quiz. What do you think is the deadliest animal in the entire world? I bet your mind immediately goes to things like sharks or maybe some of our famously venomous snakes. But the real answer? It's much, much smaller.
Yep, it's the mosquito. Now, obviously, it's not deadly because its bite is so fearsome. It's because this tiny little insect is the world's most effective delivery system for spreading devastating diseases from one person or one animal to another. Okay, so it's a global menace, we get that. But how does that turn into a specific growing problem for us here in Australia? Well, to really get a handle on that, you first have to appreciate the sheer scale of the mozzie population on this continent. Get this, Australia is home to over 300 different species of mosquito. Just let that sink in for a second. Now, sure, most of them couldn't care less about us, but they're all part of this incredibly complex ecosystem. And that ecosystem is changing in ways that are starting to affect us in a big way. So let's bring this thread a little closer to home. We're going to look at a virus that, until just a couple of years ago, was basically unheard of in Australia. And then all of a sudden, it put the entire nation on high alert. It's called Japanese encephalitis, or JEV for short. And for decades, it just wasn't really on our radar. But then, in 2022, everything changed. And the virus didn't just show up. It exploded onto the scene. And what's wild is just how fast it all happened. I mean, look at this timeline. For years, nothing. Then, in the space of a single month, just February of 2022, it pops up across 4 different states. And by March, tragically, it had already turned fatal. Now, if there's any good news here, it's this. The vast majority of people who get infected with JEV, like 99%, they show no symptoms at all. They'd never even know they had it. But for that tiny 1% who do get sick, the danger is incredibly serious. And here's why that 1% is so terrifying. Of those who actually get sick, a staggering 1 in 4, 25%, develop severe encephalitis. That's a dangerous swelling of the brain, and it can lead to permanent disability or even death. But to really get how these viruses can jump from the middle of nowhere right into our communities, we've got to look past the mosquitoes themselves. Turns out they have some very surprising accomplices hiding in plain sight. And hey, this isn't just about JEV. Take Ross River virus. It's another major mosquito-borne illness that knocks around 5,000 Aussies for a loop every single year. People used to think of it as a rural thing, but now it's in every state and it's well and truly established in our biggest cities. So how does this happen? Well, it's all thanks to a biological process called viremia. Basically, it means an animal can have a virus just circulating in its blood for a long time, often without even getting sick. This turns them into a living, breathing reservoir for the disease, just waiting for the next mosquito to come along for a drink. And this is where the story takes a really unexpected turn. The main reservoirs for these viruses aren't some kind of invasive pest. Nope. They're our own iconic wildlife. We're talking marsupials, especially kangaroos and wallabies. They can carry really high levels of these viruses. Even koalas, we found, can be carriers. And because birds can host the virus too, it can be spread over huge distances, which makes it almost impossible to contain. Okay, so we've got the mosquitoes and we've got the wildlife carrying the virus, but what's the missing ingredient that's bringing them all together and putting us right in the crosshairs? Well, it turns out we are. We're kind of accidentally creating the perfect storm for these diseases to thrive. See, it's not just one single thing. It's more like a perfect storm created by 3 huge forces all hitting at once. These amplifiers are working together to create the absolute ideal conditions for an outbreak. Let's break them down one by one. First up, climate change. All the extreme weather we've been seeing, especially those big La Niña events and the massive floods, it creates these huge, stagnant, wet, humid environments. For a mosquito, that's basically a 5-star resort with an all-you-can-breed buffet. It causes their populations to just explode. Second, urbanization. As our suburbs keep pushing further and further out into natural bushland, we're literally closing the gap between us, the animal reservoirs, and the mosquitoes that fly between the two. We're forcing everyone into the same space, and that just dramatically cranks up the risk of the virus making the jump to humans. And finally, habitat loss. Now, this part is really fascinating. When we clear land, we basically simplify the whole ecosystem. With fewer types of animals for mosquitoes to bite, they're more likely to keep biting the same species that are really good reservoirs, like kangaroos, and then eventually, us. So that lack of variety actually helps concentrate the virus, making an outbreak way more likely. So, after hearing all that, the solution seems pretty obvious, right? Let's just get rid of them, wipe out every last mosquito. Problem solved. But what would we actually lose if we did that? And this really gets to the core of the dilemma. Yeah, to us, they're an annoying pest, a serious public health risk. But if you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, mosquitoes play this absolutely crucial, maybe even irreplaceable role in the environment. Think about it. Mosquito larvae are a foundational food source for countless fish, birds, and other insects. In our waterways, they act like little cleaners, eating up algae and waste. And a lot of them are actually important pollinators for plants. They're not just buzzing around annoying us, they're doing essential jobs out there. When you understand just how complex their role is, you realize that total eradication just isn't the answer. The real goal has to be smarter coexistence. That means managing their numbers where they pose a real risk to us, and it means that personal protection, reaching for the repellent, is a much better and more sustainable choice than just trying to wipe them all out. So the next time you hear that familiar high-pitched buzz in your ear, what are you going to think? Is it just some annoying pest out for a meal? Or is it a tiny but powerful reminder of this much bigger, more complex natural drama that's unfolding all around us, right in our own backyards?